Ever been punched in the gut by silence? Like someone who once had your back just erased you, no warning, no goodbye? 1 minute they're in your orbit vibing, texting, laughing. The next you're a phantom. Messages ghosted, calls dropped, their energy a brick wall, and you're left clawing at shadows, screaming inside. What did I fuck up? Why am I dead to them? That burns a beast. Doubt eating you alive, replaying every word, every look. But here's the blade-sharp truth. When they ditch you cold, it's not random. It's their choice, their game. We've all been there, taking it like a personal gut shot, thinking we're the flaw, the screw-up. Wrong move. Stoicism slams the brakes. Their freeze-out's their mirror, not your mess. They bounce for their own reasons. Some ditch you when you're no longer their fix. Some flinch when your light outshines their dark. Others never gave a damn past the surface. Don't grovel for their why, or chase their crumbs. Real strength is cracking their code and rising above. Your worth forged in fire, untouched. Why do they pull that vanishing act? And how do you flip their silence into your power? We're slicing it raw, right now. If you're done bleeding over their absence and ready to own this, hit that like, share this with someone who's been ghosted hard, and subscribe to Victory Stoic for unfiltered truth drops. Slam I stand unfazed. In the comments, to lock in your grit and spill it. What's the harshest fade out you've faced? We're tearing it down together. Let's rise. Number 1, they're testing your reaction. Power, control, and emotional games. People don't always ignore you because they've lost interest or moved on. Sometimes they do it deliberately to see how you will react. They want to know if you'll chase them, if you'll seek their validation, and most importantly, if they can control how you feel. This happens in relationships, workplaces, and friendships alike, because power dynamics exist in all human interactions. Love and the psychology of emotional games. Emma had been dating Ryan for a few months when she noticed a sudden shift. The good morning texts stopped. The affectionate calls became rare. He seemed distant, responding to messages hours later, sometimes not at all. Confused, she asked him if something was wrong. He dismissed it with a casual "I've just been busy." But something felt off. Ryan wasn't actually busy. He was testing her. He wanted to see if she would panic, if she would chase him, if she would prove her investment in the relationship by tolerating his absence. Emma, feeling anxious, started overcompensating, texting more, planning dates, trying to bring back the closeness they once had. What she didn't realize was that by reacting emotionally, she was feeding into his game, giving him power over her emotions. This tactic, withdrawal to test control, is a classic behavior in relationships. Some people, consciously or subconsciously, pull away to create insecurity. They know that people crave certainty and consistency, so when they withdraw, they force the other person to seek reassurance. The one who chases loses power, while the one who remains detached gains it. The workplace version, corporate mind games. This doesn't just happen in love, it's equally common in the workplace. Imagine a hardworking employee, David, who just delivered a major project ahead of schedule. He expects recognition from his manager, but instead he gets silence. No praise, no feedback, just indifference. At first, David thinks maybe his work wasn't good enough. He starts second-guessing himself, putting in extra hours, trying harder to impress. What he doesn't realize is that his manager is intentionally withholding recognition to keep him feeling unsure. If David doubts his worth, he'll work harder, seek approval, and become more willing to tolerate unfair demands, all while believing he is the one falling short. Many leaders use this tactic because they know that people crave acknowledgement. By strategically ignoring someone, they make the other person question their standing, forcing them to prove their value over and over again. The more David seeks approval, the more power his manager has over him. The Stoic response: don't play the game. Both in love and at work, this manipulation only works if you react. If Emma had mirrored Ryan's withdrawal, matching his energy instead of chasing, he would have quickly realized she wasn't playing along. If David had remained confident in his abilities, not needing his boss's validation, he wouldn't have fallen into the approval trap. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the foundation of a Stoic mindset. Your emotions are yours to control. The moment you make your happiness dependent on someone else's attention, you give away that control. How to handle it. When someone tests you. 1. Mirror their energy. If they withdraw, don't chase. If they slow down communication, match their pace. This signals that you are not emotionally dependent on their approval. 2. Stay emotionally unbothered. Recognize when someone is playing a game and refuse to engage. Your confidence comes from within, not from external validation. 3. Focus on your own value. Whether in relationships or work, remember that your worth is not determined by how much someone acknowledges you. 4. Set boundaries. If someone repeatedly uses this tactic, establish clear boundaries. You do not need to tolerate manipulation, disguised as tests. Final thought. The one who needs less holds more power. People who play these emotional games do so because they want control. The more you chase, the more you prove that they have influence over your feelings. The stronger response? Indifference. When you stop reacting to withdrawal, the game collapses. You show that your emotional state is self-sustained, unshaken by someone else's inconsistency. So the next time someone suddenly starts ignoring you, don't panic, don't chase, and don't overanalyze. Instead, recognize the test for what it is and pass it by walking away. Number 2, you've stopped playing by their rules. Why control disguises itself as connection. Some people don't value relationships for what they are. They value them for what they can control. The moment you stop playing along, stop complying with their expectations, stop adjusting your behavior to please them, stop making their emotions your responsibility, they will distance themselves. It's not because they don't care, it's because they cared more about the power dynamic than the actual connection. In relationships, control often disguises itself as love, care, or concern. Take Julia and Mark, for example. In the beginning, Mark seemed like the perfect partner, attentive, affectionate, and deeply involved in Julia's life. He always wanted to know where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. At first, she saw this as devotion. But over time, she realized that his attention wasn't about love, it was about control. If she made plans without consulting him, he became cold. If she disagreed with him, he withdrew affection. When she finally stopped adjusting herself to fit his expectations, he started ignoring her. Julia hadn't done anything wrong, she had simply stopped playing his game. This behavior isn't limited to romantic relationships. In workplaces, friendships, and even families, people use subtle tactics to control others without making it obvious. A boss might give you praise only when you overextend yourself, reinforcing that you need to go above and beyond to be valued. A friend might guilt trip you when you don't prioritize their needs over your own. A family member might subtly remind you of everything they've done for you when you express independence. When you comply, you're rewarded with approval. When you resist, you're met with coldness, distance, or even silence. What's happening here is a covert power struggle. Many people don't seek equal relationships. They seek relationships where they have leverage. As long as you comply, playing their game, following their rules, keeping their comfort above your own, they keep you close. The moment you reclaim your autonomy, they withdraw. This isn't about you losing value in their eyes. It's about them losing the ability to mold you into what serves them best. Stoicism teaches that real strength comes from not depending on the approval or presence of others to validate your worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is wrong, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." This means that if someone distances themselves because you've started living by your own values instead of theirs, it's their problem, not yours. So what should you do when someone pulls away because you stopped playing by their rules? First, don't chase them. If their connection to you was based on control, it was never genuine in the first place. Second, recognize the dynamic for what it is. If someone's affection is conditional on you suppressing your own needs, it's not a relationship, it's manipulation. Third, hold your ground. Many people, when faced with resistance, will try to reclaim control by guilt-tripping, love-bombing, or using silent treatment to make you question yourself. Don't fall for it. Their withdrawal is proof that they never valued you. They valued their ability to influence you. The most liberating realization is that losing these kinds of people is not a loss, it's a win. The moment you stop fearing their reaction and start prioritizing your own self-respect, you break the cycle of manipulation. You show that your presence is a choice, not a submission. Those who only stay when they can control you were never meant to stay at all. Number 3, they're jealous of you. When your growth becomes their insecurity. Jealousy is one of the most common but least admitted reasons why people start ignoring someone. It's rarely spoken outright, but it manifests in subtle, destructive ways. Distance, coldness, dismissiveness. When someone is jealous of you, they don't always lash out. Sometimes they simply remove themselves from your life, not because of anything you did wrong, but because your success, confidence, or happiness makes them uncomfortable. Take Daniel and his old friend Ethan. They had been close for years, always on the same level in terms of careers, relationships, and social circles. But when Daniel started his own business and it took off, Ethan slowly began to withdraw. At first, it was small things, canceling plans, taking longer to respond. Then he just stopped reaching out altogether. Daniel, confused, asked if something was wrong. Ethan gave vague excuses, saying he was just busy. But the truth was simpler. Ethan wasn't happy for Daniel's success. He saw it as a reminder of his own stagnation. Instead of being inspired or supportive, he chose avoidance. This dynamic happens everywhere. Friendships, workplaces, even families. Sometimes people don't want to celebrate your wins because it highlights what they haven't achieved. They'd rather distance themselves than confront their own insecurities. Psychologists refer to this as social comparison theory. The idea that people evaluate their own worth based on how they stack up against others. When someone feels they're falling behind instead of self-improvement, they may choose resentment. Studies have shown that jealousy triggers avoidance behaviors because interacting with a successful friend or colleague forces a person to face their own perceived inadequacies. In romantic relationships, this can also be a factor. If one partner suddenly experiences major personal growth, financial success, physical transformation, or emotional independence, the other may react negatively. They may feel threatened, as if the relationship's balance has shifted. Instead of celebrating the change, they might withdraw or sabotage the connection. Stoicism provides a simple yet powerful response to this. Detach from the need for validation. Epictetus wrote, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." People who cannot celebrate your success are often trapped in their own mindset of limitation. Their reaction says nothing about your worth. It only reveals their internal struggles. So how should you handle it when someone pulls away due to jealousy? First, recognize that their reaction is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for their insecurities or their unwillingness to grow. Second, resist the urge to downplay your success to make them comfortable. You don't have to shrink yourself to keep others from feeling small. Third, surround yourself with people who genuinely celebrate your progress. The right people will see your success as inspiration, not competition. If someone suddenly starts ignoring you after you've achieved something great, don't take it personally. Some people aren't capable of supporting others without comparing themselves. And if your growth makes them uncomfortable, that's their battle to fight, not yours. Keep moving forward and let them decide if they want to rise with you or fade away. Number 4, they have personal struggles they haven't dealt with. When distance is about them, not you. Sometimes, when people start ignoring you, it has nothing to do with you at all. It's easy to assume that their silence is personal, that you've done something wrong, or that they no longer value you. But often, the real reason is much deeper. They are battling something internal, and withdrawing is their way of coping. Take Sarah and her best friend Mia. They had been inseparable for years, sharing everything from career goals to late-night conversations about life. But one day, Mia started pulling away. She stopped responding to messages, canceled plans last minute, and seemed distant even when they were together. Sarah, confused and hurt, kept asking if something was wrong. Mia just brushed it off, saying she was just tired or going through a lot. Eventually, Sarah stopped reaching out, feeling abandoned. Months later, Mia finally opened up. She had been struggling with severe anxiety and depression. It wasn't that she didn't care about Sarah. She simply didn't have the emotional energy to maintain their friendship while trying to hold herself together. She had been drowning in her own thoughts, feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, and her instinct was to retreat. This isn't just a personal phenomenon. It happens everywhere. In workplaces, employees struggling with burnout or personal stress may suddenly withdraw from social interactions, giving the impression that they are distant or uninterested. In relationships, one partner might become emotionally unavailable, not because they have fallen out of love, but because they are consumed by their own internal battles. Psychologists refer to this as emotional withdrawal, a defense mechanism where people pull away from others when they feel overwhelmed, ashamed, or incapable of handling social interactions. Studies on mental health show that people dealing with depression, anxiety, or major life stressors often isolate themselves, not because they want to, but because engaging with others feels exhausting or even impossible. So what should you do when someone you care about suddenly pulls away? First, recognize that their withdrawal is not about you. Don't take their silence as rejection. Sometimes they are simply fighting battles you cannot see. Second, offer support without pressure. A simple message like, "Hey, I'm here if you need me," can mean more than you think. Third, give them space, but don't disappear completely. Some people need time to heal, but knowing they still have a support system matters. From a Stoic perspective, Epictetus reminds us, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. This means understanding that people will struggle, they will be inconsistent, and they will sometimes let their pain affect their relationships. If someone you care about is distancing themselves, try not to react with frustration or resentment. Instead, see their withdrawal for what it is, a reflection of their own challenges, not your worth. At the same time, it's important to set boundaries. If someone's emotional distance is affecting your own well-being, you don't have to wait indefinitely for them to return. Offer understanding, but don't let their struggles pull you into negativity. There's a balance between being supportive and not losing yourself in someone else's emotional chaos. If someone is ignoring you because they're going through something personal, give them time. If they value you, they'll return when they're ready. And if they don't, then they've made their choice, and you are free to move forward. Not everyone is capable of maintaining relationships when they are struggling, but that doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of their pain alone. Number 5, they only care when they need something. When convenience disguises itself as connection. Some people don't build relationships, they use them. They appear when they need a favor, attention, or emotional support, but the moment you are no longer useful to them, they vanish. This isn't about you lacking value. It's about them only valuing relationships based on what they can get out of them. Take Alex and his coworker, Jason. Jason was friendly, always inviting Alex for coffee and including him in discussions. But Alex started noticing a pattern. Jason only reached out when he needed help with a project or an introduction to someone in Alex's network. The moment Jason got what he wanted, the friendliness faded. If Alex messaged him about grabbing lunch without an agenda, Jason would suddenly be too busy. It became clear, Jason's connection with Alex wasn't about friendship, but utility. This dynamic is common in both professional and personal relationships. Some people don't invest in real connection. They engage in transactional relationships. They are warm and engaging when they need something, but absent when you need support. This can be seen in friendships where someone only reaches out when they need advice, in family relationships where certain relatives only contact you when they want financial help, or in dating situations where one person is affectionate when they're lonely but disappears once they find another source of attention. Psychologists call this instrumental friendship, a relationship built not on genuine care, but on practical benefit. A study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that people who engage in these types of connections tend to be less emotionally invested and more likely to disappear when the relationship no longer serves them. So what should you do when you realize someone only cares when it benefits them? First, recognize the pattern. If someone consistently disappears when they have no immediate need, they are not truly invested in you. Second, stop overextending yourself. You are not obligated to be someone's emotional ATM, work consultant, or personal therapist if they don't reciprocate effort. Third, test the relationship. Reach out when you need something and see how they respond. True friends show up, users don't. From a Stoic perspective, Seneca reminds us, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. Relationships should be mutually enriching, not one-sided transactions. If someone consistently only reaches out for their benefit, they are showing you their true nature. The hardest part is accepting that some people were never really your friends. They were just opportunists passing through your life. But this realization is also liberating. You don't have to waste energy on those who only remember you when it's convenient for them. True connections don't disappear when they no longer need something. They stay because they value you, not just what you provide. Number 6. They're influenced by others. When someone else's opinion decides your fate. Sometimes people don't distance themselves from you because of anything you did. Instead, they pull away because of what someone else said about you. They let outside voices dictate how they see you, allowing rumors, gossip, or social pressure to reshape their perception. The result? They start ignoring you, not because they have a personal issue with you, but because they've been manipulated into thinking they should. Take Liam and his longtime friend, Jake. They had been close for years, but after Jake started hanging out with a new group, something changed. He became distant, unresponsive, and started acting cold. At first, Liam thought he was imagining it, but soon he overheard a mutual acquaintance mentioning that Jake's new friends had been talking negatively about him. Instead of questioning what was said, Jake simply absorbed the gossip as truth and acted accordingly, cutting Liam off without ever confronting him. This behavior isn't rare. People who lack independent thinking or emotional maturity are easily swayed by others' opinions. They prefer to conform rather than evaluate situations for themselves. Psychology calls this social conformity, the tendency for people to change their beliefs or behaviors to match those around them. A famous study by Solomon Asch in the 1950s demonstrated that people would rather give a wrong answer that matches the group than stand alone with the right answer. The same principle applies to relationships. Some people would rather believe a false narrative than risk challenging the crowd. This happens in friendships, workplaces, and even romantic relationships. A partner might distance themselves because a jealous friend planted doubts about you. A boss may suddenly overlook you for opportunities because a colleague spread false concerns about your work ethic. In these cases, you are not the problem. Their inability to think for themselves is. So how do you deal with people who drop you because of outside influence? First, don't waste energy trying to prove yourself. If someone values rumors over their own experiences with you, they lack the integrity to be in your life. Second, let them go. A true connection wouldn't crumble under hearsay. Third, pay attention to who remains. The people who take the time to understand you and see beyond the noise are the only ones worth keeping. From a Stoic perspective, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." People who abandon you because of gossip or peer pressure are revealing something important. They were never strong enough to think for themselves. Liam eventually stopped trying to win back Jake's friendship. He realized that if Jake could be turned against him so easily, he wasn't a real friend to begin with. And in the end, losing someone like that wasn't a loss at all. Number 7, they have entered a new relationship or environment. When life changes, so do priorities. Not all distance is personal. Sometimes people don't pull away because they dislike you or because of some hidden grudge. They simply enter a new phase of life, a new job, a new relationship, parenthood, or a major transition that shifts their priorities. You didn't do anything wrong. They just have less space for you in their world. Think about Emma and Sophie, best friends since college. They shared everything, late-night talks, spontaneous trips, and daily check-ins. But when Sophie started dating someone seriously, things changed. The calls became less frequent, the texts slower, and their usual hangouts turned into rare occurrences. At first, Emma felt hurt, wondering if she had done something to push Sophie away. But the truth was simpler. Sophie's life had evolved, and her priorities had shifted toward her partner. This pattern is common when people get into relationships, have children, start demanding careers, or relocate to a new city. A friend who once had unlimited time for you may now have a job that consumes their energy. A sibling who used to call every day may now have a newborn demanding their attention. It's not about you being less important. It's about their time and emotional bandwidth being stretched thin. Psychologists describe this as role transition. When a person's social roles change, their relationships naturally adjust. Research on friendships has shown that the most significant life events, marriage, career shifts, and parenthood, tend to reshape social circles not out of neglect, but out of necessity. A study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that people often drift apart not because of conflict, but because their life paths diverge. So how should you handle it when someone distances themselves due to life changes? First, accept that relationships evolve. Just because someone can't give you as much time doesn't mean they don't care. Second, adapt to the new dynamic. Instead of expecting things to stay the same, find new ways to stay connected, less frequent but more meaningful interactions. Third, don't take it personally. Their new responsibilities don't diminish your value. From a Stoic perspective, Epictetus reminds us, do not seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. Relationships will change, people will move in and out of your life, and resisting that reality only causes suffering. Instead of feeling abandoned, embrace the truth. Sometimes people's lives simply take them in different directions. Emma eventually understood that Sophie's distance wasn't about rejection, it was just life unfolding. She stopped expecting daily calls and instead cherished the moments they did share. The friendship didn't disappear, it just transformed. And sometimes, accepting the change is what keeps the connection alive. Number 8, they want distance for their own reasons. When space is about growth, not rejection. Not all distance is a sign of disinterest or abandonment. Sometimes people pull away not because they don't care, but because they need space to think, heal, or grow. They might be going through a rough time, dealing with personal struggles, or simply seeking solitude for self-improvement. When this happens, their silence is not a reflection of your worth, but of their own inner process. Take Daniel, for example. He had always been close with his best friend, Jake. They talked daily, shared their problems, and supported each other through everything. But one day, Jake started withdrawing. He stopped responding as quickly, declined invitations, and seemed emotionally distant. At first, Daniel thought Jake was upset with him. But when he finally reached out, Jake admitted that he was struggling with burnout and needed time to reset without social pressure. This need for space isn't limited to friendships. It happens in relationships and family dynamics as well. A romantic partner might pull back not because they've lost feelings, but because they're dealing with personal doubts or career stress. A family member might suddenly become distant because they're trying to work through emotional baggage. Some people isolate themselves when they're overwhelmed because they don't know how to ask for support, or because solitude is their way of processing change. Psychologists call this self-imposed solitude, a deliberate withdrawal to gain clarity, regulate emotions, and re-establish control over one's life. Studies in behavioral psychology have found that people who take intentional breaks from social interactions often return feeling mentally refreshed, emotionally stable, and more engaged in their relationships. In other words, space is sometimes necessary for personal growth. Stoicism supports this idea. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The Stoics believed that withdrawing into solitude was essential for self-reflection and resilience. Sometimes, stepping back is not avoidance, it's preparation for something greater. So how should you respond when someone distances themselves for their own reasons? First, respect their need for space. If they are withdrawing for personal growth, the best thing you can do is allow them that time without pressuring them. Second, don't assume the worst. If they haven't expressed anger or frustration toward you, their silence is likely about them, not about you. Third, be there without demanding. Let them know you support them, but don't force interaction before they're ready. Daniel eventually realized that Jake's withdrawal wasn't about their friendship, it was about Jake trying to find balance in his life. When Jake was ready, he reconnected, feeling more stable and engaged. The friendship hadn't been lost. It had simply gone through a necessary period of distance. Not everyone who pulls away is rejecting you. Some are just finding themselves, healing, or preparing for a new chapter. If you learn to recognize this, you won't waste energy feeling hurt over something that was never personal to begin with. Space is not always absence. It's sometimes the foundation for something stronger. Number 9. It's a blessing in disguise. Losing the wrong people clears the path for the right ones. When someone starts ignoring you, it's natural to feel rejected, confused, or even hurt. But what if their absence isn't a loss, but a gift? What if their silence is simply the universe, or fate, filtering out people who were never meant to stay in your life? Instead of seeing it as abandonment, consider this. Maybe you didn't lose anything. Maybe you just made space for something better. Think about Liam, a hardworking entrepreneur who always supported his friends. He helped them when they needed money, listened to their problems, and celebrated their successes. But when his own business started taking off, he noticed something strange. Certain friends grew distant. They stopped calling, stopped inviting him out, and even started making passive-aggressive comments about his success. At first, Liam felt betrayed. But then he realized something important. These people were never really his friends. They just enjoyed having him around when he was on their level. This happens all the time. Sometimes people don't leave because you did something wrong. They leave because they can no longer use you, control you, or feel superior to you. Their disappearance isn't a punishment, it's a revelation. They were never meant to go the distance with you. Psychologists refer to this as social pruning, a natural process where, over time, relationships that no longer serve your personal growth start to fade away. This isn't a bad thing, it's necessary. Studies have shown that as people evolve, their social circles tend to shrink, but the quality of relationships improves. In other words, the people who stay are the ones who truly matter. Stoicism embraces this idea. Epictetus once said, "He who is not satisfied with little is satisfied with nothing." The lesson? If someone was only in your life when it was convenient for them, let them go. True relationships aren't built on convenience, but on mutual respect and support. So how should you respond when someone starts ignoring you? First, don't chase them. If they can walk away so easily, they were never really invested in you. Second, reframe the situation. Instead of seeing it as rejection, see it as life filtering out the unnecessary. Third, focus on the people who truly value you. The right people will never make you question your worth. Liam eventually realized that losing those friends wasn't a tragedy, it was a blessing. Their absence made room for genuine connections with people who appreciated him, not just what he could offer. The same applies to you. When people walk away, don't mourn their loss. Celebrate the fact that you no longer have to waste energy on someone who wasn't meant to stay. Not every absence is a loss. Sometimes it's just life making space for something better. Final thoughts. When people ignore you, let them go. If someone suddenly starts ignoring you, don't take it personally. Their silence says more about them than it does about you. People leave for different reasons, some out of jealousy, some because they can no longer control you, and some simply because they were never truly invested in the first place. But none of this defines your worth. Stoicism teaches us to accept what we cannot control and focus on what we can. And that includes relationships. Instead of chasing after people who have chosen to distance themselves, see it for what it is, a natural filter, removing those who were never meant to stay. The people who walk away are making room for better connections, for people who truly value you. Don't waste your time trying to revive relationships that were built on convenience, insecurity, or manipulation. Instead, invest in yourself and in those who genuinely care. Your energy is precious. Spend it on those who deserve it. If this message resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe to Victory Stoic for more wisdom on mastering your mind and relationships. In the comments, type "I choose value" to affirm that you will no longer chase those who don't appreciate you. And share your experience. What's one lesson you've learned from people who suddenly ignored you? Let's talk.